It's time to engage in cyber talk with the Chief of Cybersecurity.
Management analyst. One of the key and critical skill sets that you're always going to need is to know how to analyze data. So what I've done here is that I've captured data and I created a fictional type of vulnerability report. I call it fictional because the IP addresses and the system names are not actual. They were just created by me so that I could demonstrate how to do your analysis for a vulnerability report. So I want you to assume that you conducted a scan and the output of that scan has data that is demonstrated on the top rows of your Excel spreadsheet. So as you can see here, you actually have a plugin number, you have a plugin name, which is the vulnerability name, the OS version, which is the OS type, Windows 10, IP address, and your NetBIOS there, which is the system name itself, and your severity, critical, high, mediums, low. And also too, you have your plugin output text. So if you're using Tenable Nexus, the purpose of your plugin output text is very important because it shows you what Tenable was scanning for. Let's say in this case here, if we look at this data here for 7-zip, it scanned for 7-zip located at this file path. And this was the version that it found. And this is the fixed version. So what you will find out in your vulnerability scanners is that the signature files are set up to scan, or just better yet, your audit files are set up to scan for a certain file version or a certain configuration that should be installed on the system. And if it doesn't find that, then it flags it as a vulnerability. Also too, you will find out that probably, which is a rarity, that you will find out that you have an installed version of probably 18 and the fixed version is 18, and that would signify a false positive, and then from that point you will probably have to contact the vendors. So as you work in the vulnerability management space, this is very important. Then what you will get here is a description. It tells you the version that is installed, and it tells you that it's affected by multiple vulnerabilities. So we go here and it tells you how to fix it, exactly what you need to do. And also too, you have your CVSS score in here, which is a lot of organizations like to use these CVSS scoring methods. And also too, you got your common vulnerability enumeration here. This is used to identify exploits and so forth. So mostly, if not all, vulnerabilities are going to have a CVE number. Okay. And you can go to the CVA website, and you can find this information as well on some detailed data about the CVE. And you have something here like the first discovered date. This is the first time this vulnerability was scanned and found. And then if you move over, then the last observed date. And the last observed date is very important because that's the last time it was scanned. So what you will find is that you will have certain vulnerabilities that have last observed dates because as these scans are taking place throughout the week, let's say if you scan on a Monday, and let's say if you scan again on a Wednesday, well, you may not be able to scan a certain device because it may be off the network, or you may have firewall blockage issues where you can't reach those assets. So what you have here is a breakdown version of a Tenable Nexus type of vulnerability report. Now what I am going to do is to get into some metrics here. So the first thing you have to do is to assume that you have so many rows of data. So like on this spreadsheet here, that's probably, I would assume probably close to 4,000 to 5,000 rows of data. So you're not going to be able to count all of this by hand. Some organizations have tools that they use, such as Power BI and other type of tools that you can use to do this data for you, or you can use Access, or if you have developers that work for your organization, they can also help you out as well. But let's just assume that we don't have developers on board, and we've been told to do an analysis of our vulnerability report. And our analysis is really going to be looking for true risk indicators. When I speak of true risk indicators, I'm talking about things that are exploitable. Okay, as you can see here, some of these vulnerabilities can actually be exploited, and I'm going to explain to you a place you can go and you can find that data. In fact, it's on the DHS website. There's a list of exploitable vulnerabilities. In fact, I will go and show that to you here now. So let's do a small search here, and let's go to DHS webpage here. So we're going to go up here and find this. You type it in, DHS exploitable. All right, so you type that in, and you come down here, and let's go. Exploitable list. I'm going to change it to exploitable list. There you go. Known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. So when you open it up, this is what DHS has, and it lists the CVE, and it tells you over here that all of these vulnerabilities are, and I say again, are exploitable. So what you could do is you can match this to your list of vulnerabilities, and you can see the ones that are exploitable. And also in Tenable itself, there is an option where you can export the vulnerability out, and there's an option to state whether it's exploitable or not. So I just wanted to share that information with you as well. So let's go back to our spreadsheet here. So as we bring up our spreadsheet, something that we're going to be doing is that we're going to have to go and find the OS version. Okay, here goes the way you create a pivot table using Excel. You go insert and you go pivot table, right? And so you go here, and it's going to create it for everything on the sheet, and you get a sheet that sits like this. All right, so for this training demonstration, I've already created a couple of pivot tables. So let's go to the first one, OS version. Once you have your pivot table to come up, the number one thing you really want to do at the first level is actually look at your OS versions. Look at your OS versions and make a determination on your critical high, mediums, and low, and looking at your grand totals. Because this is very important, because let's say, for instance, if you're concerned about Windows 10 devices, then you can see how many critical high, mediums, and lows that you have. All right, and if you keep going on down here, you can see 2011, 2008, if you have those on your system. But as of now, Windows 2008 is unsupported by Microsoft. Now, the way you make this happen is that you have to go to your range over here, and you select your fields. All right, so as you see here, I've selected OS version, and if I take OS version off, you see what happens, and I can turn it back on. And also too, I'm going to take my OS version here, as I see here, and I got my severity here as well too. And since I messed up the actual report here, I'm just gonna go, there we go. So what I did again is I took OS version, and I created as a row, then I also created as a value, and then the columns are set up by like the severity. But let's just say, for instance, if on this column here, let's say if I'm only concerned about criticals, well, I can go to my severity here. In fact, I can go here to the severity, and I can filter out everything and just turn on critical, and bam, it's just going to show me everything that is critical. Very, very simple. This is pretty much using Excel to get your data, because a lot of times as a vulnerability management analyst, you're going to be tasked to do this. All right, so let's move on to another area. Let's say, for instance, if we only want to look at critical high, mediums, and low based on our IP address pool. So what I've done here is that I've chosen my IP address pool here, and it goes down to rows. And also too, I chose an IP address, and I put it to values, so I could just create a table here, and then I choose my severity here. Okay, critical, high, mediums, and lows. Now this is very easy. As you can see here, I can look at a particular asset and I can see what my critical, high, mediums, and lows is. Let's say, for instance, if I wanted to know the net BIOS name per like asset, so I could turn on my net BIOS name, and bam, and it'll put it up there on the bottom of the IP address. But what if I want my net BIOS to be at the top? I just drag it to the top here, and bam. And now what happens is that I have my net BIOS name here. Okay, so that's very simple as well. So that's a key metric you could use. So let's look at the IP table. Now, this is very important too, because what you're doing here is you're taking a particular IP and you're looking at all the vulnerabilities that are associated with that particular IP address. So it's kind of simple, really. All you really need is the plugin name and you need the IP address, right? So I could very well twist this around, and I can do something else that's very simple. Is that what if I just want to look at a particular vulnerability and actually see how many IPs are affected? So I could go over here to my rows and just grab the plugin name and drag it to the top, and bam, right? Now you see the name of your vulnerability and all IP addresses that are affected. This is kind of neat and cool in Excel. These are some things you can do. So let's move to the last one, which is IP count. IP count is saying, okay, based on one particular IP, how many vulnerabilities do I have? All right. So what I've done is that I selected the plugin name and I selected the IP address, and I take the plugin name and I carry it over to value so it can count. Now, let's say what if I want to do it the opposite way, right? Let's say if I want to take it over here, and then I want to take IP address and take it over to values. And now you see what happens is that I'm able to see each particular vulnerability and also the number of IP addresses that are affected by it. Really, really cool and neat, and some neat ways to use Excel. So you can do your vulnerability analysis. All I have to say is that if you can get a copy of Tenable Nexus, and if you work on a job, then you can go through and you can do the same type of analysis. But this is just a simple way of doing analysis for a vulnerability report. There are all type of options that you could do. But as always, you stay cyber safe and you continue to learn. And if you have not picked your copy up of the Cybersecurity Mindset, please do so. There's a lot of great information in the publication for college students because it can serve as a resource guide. If you are a seasonal professional, then it's going to help you navigate the cybersecurity landscape. And if you are an executive, then guess what? You need to have that pitch to take into the boardroom. So why not read the Cybersecurity Mindset? So until then, you take care.
You've been listening to the Chief of Cybersecurity livestream. Please join the YouTube channel and purchase your copy of the Cybersecurity Mindset.